think it was a record number this year.
Wow.
We're breaking the record every time it's been in Boston. This was last time was 2012.
Everybody goes and someone tries it. Give me the hardest canal you have, give me the hardest tooth block you have, so let me try this new file. Someone comes in straight asking for the price of this thing, the handpiece, the files, the sealers, and they don't care about anything else.
It's always the same question. Dr. Koch, is endo going to still be a specialty? Is implants going to replace? Endodontics is not going away, okay?
So, Annie, are you saying corporate money has bought happiness? Welcome to the Pulp Podcast, where we talk about all things dentistry and non-dentistry from a generational perspective. I'm joined with my co-hosts, Dr. Ann Koch and Dr. Parsa Shahidi. So we are at the end of the American Association of Endodontists meeting here in Boston.
Right.
And the past 4 days, it's been quite a descent of all of these endodontists with their files onto the city of Boston, to the Beantown. What has been your experience of this, gathering of endodontists? And I think it was a record number this year.
Wow.
We're breaking the record. Every time it's been in Boston, it's broken a record.
Fabulous location.
Last time was 2012. Speaks for Boston's record-breaking.
Right.
Go
the
Patriots.
best.
So
maybe not the best baseball team, but a great place for an
best at
endodontic
everything.
meeting.
Let's make it clear. Everybody in the audience here, that best at everything.
We're probably going to have some New York fans here. They're going to complain.
Okay, we love you all.
So, all right, Annie, what do you think? What was your overall take on the whole meeting?
I thought the meeting was fabulous, and obviously I've been to multiple Boston meetings before. I love it having it at the Heinz Convention Center. Those of you who've ever been to meetings in Boston, sometimes they're out at the Seaport, but you're out in left field as far as I'm concerned at the Seaport. But here, I spoke to endodontists going to Fenway Park, to the Red Sox games, people going to the restaurants right there on Boylston and on Newberry Street. It was fabulous. Last year in Los Angeles, what stunned me was the amount of technology with the exhibitors, also the amount of undergraduate dental students. It was almost 1,000 undergraduates last year. What really impressed me at this meeting, and I mean really, really impressed, was the participation level by a number of the Northeast dental schools. Obviously, I know that the University of Pennsylvania and Harvard both had an incredible number of students, of residents, faculty, and alumni presenting or participating, as a moderator, as a presenter, as a poster clinic. I'm sure that Tufts and BU also had a lot of people. But I think to see that type of active participation at the annual meeting by the schools speaks incredible volumes about the specialty, and I think it's a great sign.
Yeah.
Speaking of participation, you certainly were moderating a few sessions and were getting involved.
It was really cool. I mean, from a high level, first of all, so happy it was in Boston. I mean, this is our home, and like you said, is a record. But on behalf of the Boston community, I think between Harvard, Tufts, BU, I think we defended the home turf pretty well. Everybody had a great time. Having heard from the leadership of the AAE, having seen all the sessions, I thought it was awesome. I thought it was a lot of fun too. Just a shout out to the organizational committees, all the fun social events. Keep that up. We love it. Last night there was
There's no paucity of tequila.
Yeah, exactly, right. There's a finale at the like a Celebrate Boston event. Obviously every year they do a Celebrate LA, Chicago, Boston, and then it was at the Boston Public Library, just next door to the Heinz Convention Center, and it was a great time. The AAE always does it, super nicely. They rented the whole place. They shut it down. I never thought I saw so many endodontists, but everyone was having a good time, dancing, having fun, and the residents had a great time. The sessions were great, though. The sessions were great. Funny story, because you guys were such a big part of that. One of these big sessions, Dr. DeBellion from UPenn, such a great guy, as you guys know very well. He talked about bioceramics, and the whole first 10 to 15 minutes, he was talking about the journey and story of bioceramics and introducing. Of course, you guys are the main part of that story and bringing that to the endo field. So I was moderating that session. I was trying not to laugh because I was thinking about all this, inside information I have. And but it was great. People were sitting on the floor at some of these sessions.
Right. Wow.
It was packed. Sitting on the floor, looking outside with the cameras outside the door. So I had a lot of fun. What do you think, Dr. Nasseh?
Me too. I mean, I think AAE is a time where people come together to, do their own interprofession as opposed to what we normally mingle with our colleagues or refer and so on. But within the profession, that, rebuilding that collegiality and sense of friendship, it's seeing your classmates from many years ago, people in your school, your instructors, your teachers, and, reconnecting again, because we all go back home to our own little enclaves, whether it's group or solo practices, and we just do a daily routine of seeing cases. And this is really nice to see that somewhere out in the universe there are people that have a common experience that are going through the same thing, and they can kind of relate at that fundamental level.
You know what? I hope sometime the schools stagger their annual reception. Because this year it seems like everybody was Thursday night.
Yeah.
And if you go to school A, obviously you're going to go to your own school's reception. But many times, it's wonderful to visit school B and C and D and meet those people. But this year it seemed like everybody was only Thursday night.
Yeah. They've always done it at the same time. And I think part of that is strategic so that people don't go to other schools and eat all their hors d'oeuvres and drinks. No, just kidding.
Yeah.
But
we had a great one. We had a great one. Obviously, all of us were there at the Harvard reception. The great Aben Louis.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, Aben Louis is, my God, the shrimp looked like prawns. They were so big, right?
It was a great
I thought it was lobster. It was a shrimp.
Yeah.
It was cool because I got to meet a lot of the legendary folks I had never met before. I had never met Dr. White. I got the chance to talk to him. And
one of the other things that was really, I think this is the one that kind of sets the mark, is that in Boston, there was a prior endodontic program that was a Forsyth-based endodontic program. It had a Harvard component, means that your master's, if you did the master's, it was over at Harvard. That program stopped in the early to mid 80s. And then when I reconstituted the endo program in 93, 94, that was an HSDM program. But for the first 10 years, anytime we had receptions, half the audience, understandably, were Forsyth people. They were really nice. But the other night, on Thursday night, it was all HSDM people.
Yeah.
I've never seen anything like that. That was astonishing. 80-something people?
Yeah.
That's an amazing number for a relatively small program. It was wonderful.
It was great. What did you both think about the any cool new technologies or gadgets you saw? Anything that blew you away?
One of the things that was, and I've heard a couple of endodontists talking about it in the elevator even, is the fact that in the Chicago meeting, what was that, 2 years ago?
Yeah.
That was really the first time we saw all these multiple financial management companies, kind of like, dental service organizations, all these group things, kind of like a DSO. Last year, it was a little bit less. But this year, maybe there was the same amount, but there was a little bit less profile, it seemed to me.
Yeah.
That there wasn't as much of a financial aspect to this. It was much more clinical.
Yeah, I mean, the growth of DSOs has slowed down dramatically as a result of the overall financial policy at the level of the Feds, right? As the interest rates have gone up, money's become tight. So that kind of private equity money is not quite as available. So the growth was kind of hampered by the overall picture of the economy. But, I mean, they're still there, and that's the quintessential question of, are they overall good or are they overall bad for the profession? And I guess all of us have our own little take on it.
What astonished me was the number of file companies.
Yeah, all over the world.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. And I had a really, for me, it was a fun experience because I went to one booth and I had a person demonstrate this new super file. They severely transported the canal. And of course, then I used it. I severely transported the canal.
Oh, wow.
So I think what the takeaway is, there's a lot of different companies saying something, but you have to experience for yourself how that instrument or how that technology works in your hands.
Yeah.
Files have commoditized so much so that it's now become one of these things that it's just a question of price, for better or worse. Of course, quality ends up suffering in many of these cases because you never know what you're going to get. But it is important, you're right, because so much people are forced to have innovation. And so much of innovation comes with the risk that it could break, right?
Yeah.
So it's just, I think we do need to kind of, at some level, maybe slow down and kind of figure out what's the right thing to do. What do you think, Parsa?
I thought it was cool because, you go to these different, manufacturers and everybody's doing their best to bring something unique to the table or be cost effective. And it's very noble. It's really cool to me to see other, endodontists I try to observe them looking at these new things, and I think it's really funny. But everybody goes and someone tries it. Give me the hardest canal you have, give me the hardest tooth block you have. So let me try this new file. Right. Some people it's all about the relationship with the sales reps, and so I just like to see how people make decisions. Someone comes in straight asking for the price of this thing, the handpiece, the files, the sealers, and they don't care about anything else. So I think part of these meetings is, the way I look at it is, there's a mix of lectures, but then there's all this stuff happening on the exhibition and show floor, which I think is so fascinating. Yes. Business being done, people purchasing for their practice, thinking about the changes they're going to make. And obviously, spending some time together with you two, I learned a lot about the way that you perceive these new systems and things like that. But one of my biggest takeaways that you mentioned were there's so many future potential endodontists at these meetings. So I met a lot of students who we have a lot of students in our audience, and I would recommend going to the AAE because you meet so many people that you end up becoming friends with and then connecting with. It's amazing. I love it.
One of the things where I'm in a very, very small minority on this is the difference between the American Association of Endodontics and the American Association of Endodontists. All right, as an endodontist, that's a specialty thing. But I think what I would like to see a little bit sometimes is a little bit of attention given to those dentists who do 80% of the root canals in the country. Mm-hmm. All right, and the endodontists are doing great. There's a great need for endodontists. Endodontic programs are amazingly competitive to get into, as you know. But at the end of the day, still 75 to 80% of endodontics is being done by non-specialists. So what are we doing to make that whole section much more predictable in terms of the cases they select to do? I think with the non-endodontist case selection is paramount. It's hugely important. And then once you've got the teeth that maybe these people feel that they can do competently in a predictable manner, what's going to be the best protocol for them to follow? But I don't see much of that being addressed. And my concern is, and I think we all know as endodontists that schools seem to be spending less time on undergraduate endodontic education. The reason that's a concern for me is that if you're an undergraduate dental student and you don't get some exposure to endo, you don't know where endo fits into the treatment plan. Right. And obviously, I'm an endodontist. I think endodontist is an enormous thing. We should be in a business of saving teeth. But if you're a third, fourth year dental student and you really have very little exposure to endodontics, you don't know what endo can and what it can't do.
Oh, you're absolutely right. There is a crisis in education. We've talked about it before. It's kind of everything trickles down in many ways. I'm not sure if, AAE is in a position to do anything about the undergraduate education. I guess through the quota, maybe that would be American Dental Association's job. But you're absolutely right. It is an informed graduate dentist would be the kind of person who would then have a far better idea as to what endodontics can do. If we try to be too much of a protectionist and prevent them from knowing what endo can do and how it could be done at a level where they're comfortable. But at the end of the day, since the specialist, based on the ADA standards, sets the standard of care for doing it, how they can do it better, then obviously, as you've said many times before, Annie, is that people end up gravitating towards the simpler solution or whoever else is kind of offering another quick answer, which would be then an implant. So we have to find that specific gravity in which the teaching and education, responsible teaching, which is something we've been advocating for a long time.
And this is a perfect opportunity with three different generations. Parsa, is your generation of endodontic residents, do you feel threatened either by implants or by the non-specialists doing endodontics?
I don't. And I think to answer that question, to directly relate it back to our experience this week, when you... most of the people I talk to that come to any of these events, whether they're specialists or non-specialists, they realize, oh my gosh, there's so much information I either don't know or I need to know more about. And especially through the residency program, you think about before and after, you learn so much and you realize, oh my God, I didn't know anything relative to, what's out there. And I think these conferences are a great moment to understand and appreciate that. So a lot of the general practitioners who were at this event, I talked to a few of them, their feedback to me was, first of all, I love endo and I want to get into endo if at the minimum. But second of all, there's so much that I don't know. And if anything, it creates this awareness that it's a lot more than the, maybe the pieces that you learn in the pre-doctoral experience or the dental school experience. And I think the takeaway is you have to increase your knowledge, you have to increase your expertise if you want to do anything. And I mean, we've been talking about this implant conversation for a long time. I don't notice a lot of the people in the perio, oral surgery, or prostate space really pushing implant. It feels like their personalities are also heroic. They're trying to do the right thing and do right by the patient. So I think that we're in a good spot.
Has to do with your sample, with your specific sample and its own set of biases.
That's
if you're
true.
working with high quality people, they understand the value of saving teeth. Whereas if you're driven purely by financial incentives, then you have a whole different set of incentives. And let's face the facts. I mean, every group has its own bad apples. So
yeah, you're right.
I thought this meeting, though, was a huge success. And I thought the vibe was wonderful. There was a lot of energy.
Yeah.
Like at the dinner the other night, and I'm sure all the other schools' dinners had the same type of vibe to it. There was tremendous energy in a room.
Yeah.
And I think on the floor, on the exhibition floor, it was really good. So I think the state of endodontics, if you want to call it like that, I think the state of endodontics is very sound and very healthy.
Very good.
Yeah, definitely. As endodontics as a whole, I think is true. And of course, there's a great amount of misinformation online, and it's important to kind of cut through that. But the idea is that how do we get better quality graduate restorative dentists? How can we inform them better? And that really goes down to the core of education at the fundamental level. Because once they don't get that education, then they leave and they have to get it elsewhere, and depends on the quality of the education they get afterwards as well, and that makes a difference.
Another thing that's amazing to me is, and we saw this with the Innovation Day. Mm-hmm. I'm amazed, Parsa, with young endodontists like yourself, how entrepreneurial they are. I came across so many endodontists, like 5, 6, 7 practices. How are you managing that, right? And for people my age and even your generation, one of the practices in town here that, what did they have at the time? Did they have 10 practices or something? They were like the biggest endodontic practice
at that
in
time,
the world.
yeah.
And now there's a lot of your colleagues are out there now, and they've got multiple practices. That's astonishing to me that they're able to manage that.
We had a long conversation about this. We have some individuals, especially some of our faculty, who have these practice models. And there's a lot of information at the AAE about this too. There's a few companies that really focus in on that talk about, it's a sort of a consulting model where they talk about how you can do that. I think that's what's exciting a lot of GPs.
It's amazing.
And it's really motivational. You hear these things, you're like, oh my God, you can really leave a big mark on the space.
Right.
You extend the practices, go statewide. It's really interesting. I mean, it's a different practice model, but they have these opportunities for people who want to do that. I mean, it's not the DSO model, but it's sort of like your own personal DSO, right? So it's 6, 10, 15 practices.
That's enormous to manage.
Yeah.
And then the people who, and again, maybe 3 or 4 people I was speaking to, they said they were actually still seeing patients clinically, which was really amazing to me. If you've got 7 or 10 practices, that's a lot of stuff in your desk.
Yeah,
okay?
Right.
But I think that's incredible.
Yeah, scaling endo was, to me, I've always just kind of had the one practice, and I thought it was enough.
It's enough.
I always said, you could do better in one thing. And that's another thing, like when you talk about companies and the product line and so on, everybody feels like they have to expand the product line as opposed to get better and better in whatever you have to offer. So there's like 2 different philosophies in terms of what you can do. So I don't feel like it's necessarily better to expand your field and have more offices. You can also concentrate your effort and get better at what you already do in that one office.
Absolutely.
And then make that super successful in many ways. So there's different models. There's no one way of doing things, I guess. It's just because, but as you scale it and you go up, then it becomes more and more difficult to manage it too. So then you have to have additional mechanisms to keep track of things.
Yeah. I'd say like one of the biggest takeaways from the conference or the AAE as a whole is like there's so much to learn. And if anybody hasn't been who's interested in endo, I think it completely opens up your eyes. Totally. There's so much to it. And a big theme is like people are happy. There's energy.
Yes.
Totally. I really, I'll say thankfully, thank God, I didn't really come across anyone, either an old friend or a colleague or someone I had just met who seemed upset with the profession. Right. And if it's any advice to the audience out there who's looking to do endo, you should do it. It's great. Yes. right? I mean, everyone seemed like the energy was really high.
Absolutely.
And why do you think that is? Is it just the hours? What's the real secret here? Why is everyone so happy?
I think there's a couple of things. I've always thought endodontics was one of the best specialties in the entire realm of medicine or dentistry combined, right? And especially for women, because you can still work 3.5 days a week, feel very sated with your education, do well financially, and have a life. Okay?
Yeah.
But I think one of the things is that once you get out of school and you're working, the whole thing about getting people comfortable and getting people numb and doing stuff, all of a sudden you start to get into a flow where you're actually doing stuff that makes people feel good.
Yeah.
You're taking people out of pain. You're doing well financially. And then when you meet other endodontists, you all realize, well, we're all doing pretty well. We're satisfying a need. And I think that's part of being a professional. And I think the other thing is that, again, not so much maybe now, but 7 years ago, 10 years ago, in endodontic residency programs, it was always the same question. Dr. Koch, is endo going to still be a specialty? Is implants going to replace? Endodontics is not going away, okay? And I think when you are out there practicing and making a living and taking care of patients, I think that's what gives you energy.
Yeah, I totally agree with
It's
you.
an incredibly rewarding profession. I mean, where else do you make such a big difference in someone who hasn't slept in days out of pain, and you can quickly get them out of pain? And it's so amazing with patients that come in, they have like a whole different personality because they haven't slept for a few days and they're in so much pain. Then you do your little magic there, and then they leave and they come back the next day and they're, oh my God, it was like amazing, blah, blah, blah. So it is good. And the profession has certainly a path for improvement because it's highly technical and it requires dexterity. You know, all of us, as you talked about, is, you know, I love coming to these meetings because I run into dental students and people that are interested in dentistry, that are applying, that are watching our stuff and even this podcast, and they give such a good feedback because they always say, oh, I'm doing a lot of endo, I love endo, blah, 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 all this stuff. Once you start your specialty program, the first thing we do, as I'm sure Parsa you've experienced, is that you quickly realize the amount of information that you don't know.
Yeah,
you know now what you don't know, and it's an overwhelming kind of an experience that you start with the highest confidence and you quickly break it down, and then it's a rebuild. That's the Dunning-Kruger effect, right?
Yeah.
You start by having high confidence with little knowledge, but then the moment you get the knowledge, and you start to lose the confidence. But then that's the whole point of the career, is that over time, as you get better and better in the techniques and understanding of the procedure, and like athletics, where you're gonna have to retire fairly quickly as soon as you get really good, because the body can't do it. Your peak is much later, and then you will just the cumulative knowledge and experience that you've had will make it a really fulfilling profession if you learn how to apply the brakes and find your proper happy medium.
Yeah.
If you become one of those people where like every hour I'm not working, it's like, one precision, then you will work yourself to the ground. But finding that proper happy medium is basically what it comes down to, because it is otherwise an incredibly fulfilling profession.
One of my takeaways is every time I go to a meeting like this is a totally off the track here, how difficult it is being a salesperson.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, when you do this for a number of years, you start to know people. Then all of a sudden you have to have a scorecard. Who are you working for now? Is it company A? Is it company B? Company C? And then you realize it's not an easy job what they have to do. And
you're talking about salespeople at the booths, or you're talking
at the booths?
Okay, okay.
So, I mean, it's not easy standing there all day, and what happens if you have no customers?
And you have people asking really hard questions.
Yes.
The truth is, the endodontists want to know all the information.
Yes.
Sometimes it gets technical. It's a hard thing. You talked about this, Dr. Nasseh, is like half knowledge, right? Like you get in, you realize there's so much to know.
Right.
I think I don't know who said this quote. So someone in the audience, you got to put a comment. Half knowledge is the most dangerous thing out there, the most dangerous thing that exists, because you think that you know everything, and there's a whole world that you don't know. But I think the people that have come to these conferences, it's like this amazing camaraderie. I watch you both run into old friends and colleagues, and there's so much joy in that.
That's fun.
And I'm looking forward to that one day, in years down the road, to continue to develop the relationship with these people every year. It's awesome.
Yeah, no, well, first of all, I mean, if you're in any specialty, everybody who's been in endodontics knows difficult patients.
Yeah.
They know patients who've come in tremendous pain. They know all the things that everybody else has dealing with patients. So what I like is that it does build a camaraderie. Like you've put your time in. Like a first-year endodontic resident in many ways is dangerous because they think they know everything, right? Then all of a sudden, 6 months out in the real world practicing, it's like, holy smokes, there's some stuff here I can improve on. But I think when you get through that whole process, I think it really does build a collegiality and a comradeship, which I think is part of being a professional.
So that kind of leads to this question. Since, this podcast is probably going to be watched, since it's the AAE, mostly by younger residents and new graduates and so on. What would be, from your perspective, having had a long career in endodontics, that I've done both clinical teaching and commercial endodontics, what would be your summed up advice in a nutshell for anyone watching?
I have a tremendous thing, and I saw this. And what happens, especially now, I think it's really pertinent because of the obscene tuition that many people are paying. You can't pay back all your loans in the first year. I realize maybe there are a couple of people out there, maybe they can. What I'm trying to really say here is when you come out and graduate from your program, don't cut corners. So if you start cutting corners the first year out, and I've seen endodontic residents, not my residents, but I've seen endodontic graduates, recent graduates, where every molar is 21 millimeters, every canal. Well, wait a second, every canal is not 21 millimeters. Oh, it's calcified. What you're trying to do is you're trying to crank out numbers. So if you're cutting corners your first year out of school, out of the training program, by year 5, that corner is a swath, okay? And all of a sudden, you don't want to do that. And so I think what you do is when you come out of a training program is concentrate on your technique. Speed comes naturally. So that first couple of months, the case that took you maybe 2 visits in your endodontic training program, certainly like the first 18 months, all of a sudden you're knocking it out in 50 minutes. The next thing you know, it's 45 minutes. It's 40 minutes with a better result. But I think what you do is adhere to your principles, and everybody should graduate with principles. The part that I always say, everybody understands clinical endodontics, whatever technique you're using. The part that I think people miss in endodontics is the philosophical part. It's like Dr. Nasseh, right out of day 1, it was a guaranteed painless practice, and it was patient-based, okay? Yes. And so I think my advice to, certainly for endodontic graduates, is that first year, concentrate on your technique. The speed comes naturally, and by year 2, you're making more money than you could ever have dreamed about, and you're doing better cases than you could ever have dreamed about.
That's terrific. I mean, obviously, I agree 100%. I think, and also in a macro view of it, in a holistic way, is as you graduate, basically what you're saying, Annie, is to orient yourself properly towards your vision.
Right.
And that vision is based on a certain set of principles that you kind of carry with you. Right. And those principles are going to be the dear part that are going to guide you along the way through your vision. And that's so key, is to have that. And I think, as you said, it's best not to be so directed towards just, financial success, but to really develop a philosophy of what you really need to do in order to achieve your goal, in terms of what is your vision of practice and what is your vision of your life outside of practice. Because obviously, it's that work-life balance is the essence of the new generation, as they've kind of, our generation, and I think it was more kind of like work, right? Yeah. But it seems like this generation is more prone to trying to find that right balance between work and life.
It's funny you say that, actually. So a couple of things. Well, first of all, one of the things about these conferences is that you get to learn about the different paths you can take. So one other motivation to come is to explore, and you see academia. So you talk to all these amazing faculty and program directors, and you get to learn about what life in academia is like outside of residency and after. Then you talk to people who are, focused on practice management, building their practice into a beast of a practice or a conglomerate of a practice. We have a few of those. And then, or do you want to do commercial stuff? Do you want to really have an impact on a global scale with product development, innovation, all those things? So you learn about the paths you can take as a career path. But all this to say, you get to have this wisdom, and you talk to people like yourselves, and you learn a lot. But I had an interesting conversation with someone. He was asking me about plans, and he said, I started, working less and less and less. And I said, oh, great. And he's a young guy, probably 40. And he said, I'm working about 12 days a month. Right. And I couldn't believe that. He said, I do 5 days a week, the first week. Then I do 4 days a week. And then I do 3. So that's 12 days. Right. And then I have a week and a half off. a month. And if you think about that over 12 months, that's like, 3.5, 4 months of off time. And he's making one hell of a living. And he was smiling ear to ear. And he said, I spend time with my family, and I travel and this and that. And it just opens up your eyes as what's possible. So the commitment to studying in dental school and college and residency, hopefully it's worth it.
Totally.
Yeah. It goes back to have a lifestyle like that, and you also have to set the mechanisms in place correctly and your set of priorities correctly so that can work, right? So one of the advices I always give when I give talks at the residency programs around the country is I always end it by saying my biggest piece of advice is what Dr. Dunsky told me when I graduated, which is to live below your means. So if you live below your means, then you are no longer a slave to the capital, and that you are able to make decisions that are more aligned with your principles and values, as opposed to be forced to, whether there is whatever is behind the back that is potentially biasing and influencing you. And I think you start from that place, everything will work out in the long run. I read a book as a part of, I think when I was at Northwestern, there was a book called The 1 Minute Salesperson. And the book by Spencer Johnson was basically a very simple one. The whole message of it was that do the right thing, create the value, work on whether it's the customer or us as the patient, make sure that they're happy, and then the financial component comes with it. But if you focus on the financial component part of it, then you're not going to create the value and all the stuff that are necessary to endure and have long-term value and benefits to the society as a whole. So this is the kind of short-term versus long-term thinking. And if that's what I was saying, if you orient yourself correctly at the beginning, you will end up having the fulfillment, the financial success, and the reputation that you're going to need to have a complete package.
Did you think there was a big international contingent at this year's meeting?
Yeah, it is. And I think that, nowadays, especially with the digital media and so on, the world, Thomas Friedman's thing of the world is flat has become realized, although it might be reverting back. We'll have to see how that works out. But, there is more and more connection in the world. And it was great to see more and more international people attending.
Yeah, that's been a kind of constant number for a while, just like the undergraduate dental students.
Right. Yeah.
But to me, the biggest takeaway for me on this meeting was people like yourself, Parsa, people who were endodontic residents taking such an active, participatory posture in this meeting. Like, how many meetings were you a moderator for?
2, and
So
I felt I was very lucky to do that. And we had a lot of on behalf of the Boston schools. Obviously Harvard, BU, Tufts, lots of poster presentations, great research. One of our awesome residents won the research award.
That's wonderful.
Dr. Nasseh. So we had some awesome contributions, and it really, I think the biggest thing from that is, first of all, you're learning so much, but it's a great feeling to see that the people that you're kind of growing and learning with are doing so many different unique things. And I wonder when you guys look back at the different years on AAE, has it changed a lot? Has it become something different, or has it always had this vibe and energy of positivity and let's get this done?
I think where the AAE changed was in the late 90s with Tulsa Dental. Tulsa Dental started sponsoring this big reception that first night, and that first reception was fairly extravagant. Then it got really extravagant. Then it got crazy out of control. And I think it generated, and years ago, it was just part of the cultural thing. Younger people were a little bit hesitant going up to at the time, it was no grandmothers, the grandfathers of endodontics, right? And there was that whole group. That game has changed, by and large. But I think part of it is just as the culture has moved forward, I think there's a lot more interaction on the floor than there was previously. And I think I see that as nothing but a tremendous positive.
So, Annie, are you saying corporate money has bought happiness?
Well, anyway, listen, other than having my fall, and I just came back from urgent care, so that's why I'm looking the way I am, folks. But other than really creating some damage to my personal body, I thought it was a tremendous, tremendous AAE meeting. And I think also, as Boston folks, Boston guys here, I just think it's great that the rest of the country came in and got a chance, even with the weather, to experience Boston. Boston is a really great city.
It's the best.
It is.
It's the best.
It's a walkable town. It's safe. The baseball team could be better, but other than that, it's
that's right.
It's
it
a
all
could
that
always
matters
be
is
better.
that the Celtics are going to win another championship. That I can tell you.
We'll have to see. But yeah, I agree too. It was a great meeting, and it was great to see all the young people come together. Parsa, you did a great job with your moderations and all the talks, and it was great to see you back in town too, Annie.
Where is the meeting next year? Is that
It's going to be at Salt Lake City.
Oh, Salt Lake City. Oh, that's
So
interesting. Yes.
it's going to be interesting. So we can all probably go. I don't know if it's going to be ski as possible at that point. I think maybe
knows?
not.
But what dentists don't realize, there's so many entrepreneurial dental shops in Utah.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm
making
excited.
making everything from endodontic products to toothpaste to disclosing agents. It's amazing. I think if there's one state, if you said to me, what state is most entrepreneurial with mom and pop shops and dentistry, flat out, it's Utah.
Oh, wow.
So it'd be interesting to see how many of those folks show up at the.
Sure, Dr. Christensen must have set the standard over there, so
Yeah,
everybody has to follow. All right, so let's not make this
All
too
right.
long. It was a great meeting. It was great to see you both and attending, and we'll come back in the next podcast and do some more.
Absolutely.
All right, terrific.
Good time.
See you soon.